Welcome to the Keith B. Dixon Zone, dropping photography knowledge all day long. Right? Welcome back to another podcast broadcast. My name is Keith B. Dixon. Today we're going to be talking about print on site. Yes, POS. You might know it as POS, the acronym POS, print on site. Printing photos on site. We're going to talk about that today. That's actually my specialty. I've been doing it for years now, and we're going to dive right into exactly how it works and how it works effectively. I'm going to share some of my experiences about print on site and some of the things you should be concerned with. I've got a laundry list here of just very important items that you should know about if you're planning on doing this. So let's go. So, you're a brand new photographer, you're looking for a way to increase your revenues. Print on site is definitely a great option, and you can use it in a number of ways. So let me first describe what print on site is. Essentially, a client comes to you and they're having an event and they want pictures off the backdrop, kind of like a photo booth. I hate to say that, kind of like a photo booth, but most people can relate to a photo booth. You stand there, you snap the picture, and you get it instantly. That's pretty much what it is. And it's the paper it's a unique type of paper. It dries when it comes off. It has a thermal head, so it's not like your inkjet or a laser printer. It uses thermal technology, and you can handle it right off the printer and slide it into a folder. And I'm going to talk about the image presentation towards the end. So that's what print on site pretty much looks like. Now, as you guys know, there's a lot of photo booths out there. I don't do any photo booths. I had thought about it when they first came out. They were very archaic in a sense. It was just a rig, so to speak, with a camera. And then they started getting innovative with them and making mirrors. And that was probably one of the more elaborate ones I saw last year at WPPI. They had a big mirror. You stand there and it snaps your picture. I've seen all different types. They have actual photo booths, and the laundry list goes on. I don't do any of those, so I'm not even going to be talking about that today. I'm going to be talking about kind of like the brick and mortar, like the hardcore backdrop photo. Some people even refer to it as prom pictures, right? By the way, if you're a photographer and you photograph proms, you're probably making a ton of money. So all those prom photographers are probably laughing all the way to the bank. That's the way to go. Volume print on site is the way to go. Now, it breaks down into two classifications. The first one is speculative, and most photographers will start out on a speculative job. That means you hopefully you can charge some type of setup fee. You go out there and with the hope of selling some images and making some money back. Now, I'm going to tell you, that's the hustle, that's the grind. That's how I got started in this game. I didn't own any equipment. I would just find the jobs and I would contract them out to one of the guys on my crew, still on the crew to this day. And that's how we would get it done. So I'd mostly be shooting off the backdrop and he'd be handling the printing. It was golden. I loved it. And matter of fact, I got hooked because we would go to an event. He'd charge a setup fee. It ranged from $150 to $200. It just kind of depends on your client. Enough to cover the paper is ideal. So whatever your paper cost is, you want to cover that if you can. And then folders, I'll get into that towards the end in terms of image presentation, some of the options you can use that are cost effective. But we would make upwards of $1,000 sometimes in a night, and then we'd just split the money. So that's one way of thinking about it. Now, there were cases where we didn't make that much money at all, sometimes barely making $300. That's the name of the game. And it works kind of like a teeter-totter. You know, sometimes you make a lot of money, sometimes you don't. And it just comes with the territory. For us, it was about getting that job. And if they were doing this on a regular basis, that's what it was about. We knew that we could count on that revenue, whether it was $500 for the night and we were splitting 500 and 500, or it was $1,500. We knew that we were going to get that money for that day. And typically most events are about 4 hours. So you figure $250 to work 4 hours, not too shabby when you're just standing there pushing the button. Now, full disclosure, I don't do a lot of speculation. I don't do any speculation jobs now. Everything is pretty much prepaid, and that's how I roll now. But it took me honestly about 10 years to get to that point. It was 10 years of just, setting up in the backroom club, setting up, at a community center, doing a retirement party. It just became part of the game. And as we did these consumer events for people, retirement parties, birthday parties, you name it, type of parties we were doing them, people that work for companies would say, hey, my company would love to have a feature like this. And that's what kind of broke it open for me. The second part, which I think is really important, is the prepaid. Those are tough to get because you have to have a reputation for doing print on site. And I'm not going to say it's going to be easy, because it is one of the things that you will run into is bottlenecking. And I'm going to dive into that in just a quick second. Bottlenecking. So you're doing a print run, something goes wrong, and next thing you know, you're behind the 8-ball, and the photos never stop, but the printers do. All kind of things happen. So full disclosure, before I go any further, I am a DMP ambassador. DMP supports me, and I want to make that perfectly clear, but I am going to talk about other printers, not necessarily other brands, but I'm going to talk about my experience with other printers and why I use DMP. So I want you to know that going into it. All right. So, as far as the best printers go, because there's a lot on the market, and you guys, on the West Coast, I'm on the West Coast here. On the West Coast, I work with a company called Foto Club Inc. And I've been with Foto Club Inc. for years, as long as I've been doing print on site. And my man Ruben there, give him a call. I gotta do a shameless plug for Ruben. Give him a call. It's an experience that he will take care of you, and that's important in print on site, because you got to have nerves of steel, number one, because there's always this thing with supply and demand on media, buying folders, and you got to have people that you can totally rely on. And that's why I rock with Ruben. He's on the West Coast, and if I need to get something, he's down in LA. It's a hop, skip, and a jump on anything that's being shipped. So that's my strategy for dealing with print on site and getting material. As far as printers go, I've used them all. If you can name a printer, I've probably used it. And there's a secondary printer, Mitsubishi. I started on Mitsubishi. I said I wasn't going to say the name, but I'm going to throw that out there just so you guys know, what the close second is, so you don't make the mistake and go beyond that. Mitsubishi, good printer, reliable. But what I found with clients looking at the image side by side, now I've actually ran both printers side by side, people tend to gravitate towards the DMP print because it just pops on color. And I got to tell you that your lighting is a major factor, and that's coming up. That's going to be one of my points. I'm going to talk about your lighting. But the DMP printers, it's unforgiving if you make a mistake. So if you're not good with your lighting, if you're not good with your color correction and doing that in the computer, what you see is what you get. It's that good. And one of the things that I did before I made the switch was I actually printed some images on both printers and then laid it out for the client and say, hey, which one looks better to you? And I did it a bunch of times at one of my events. And overwhelmingly, people went for the DMP print. And granted, I started on Mitsubishi, so it's just a greater printer. And I'm going to say that's quasi. It's quasi. Mitsubishi makes a good printer, but DMP just makes a better printer, and I want you guys to really understand that. The DS620 is what I use, and there are other lesser brands out there for lower cost money. I'm going to tell you, don't waste your time with you. Be better off saving your money and getting the best. And if you can't wait, it's really tough for you. Call up Ruben and say, hey, do you have some demo models for sale, and try to get one that way. But I would buy the best DMP printer, and they make a bunch of them. I'm going to talk about the DS620. That's what I use. I would buy the DS620 and call it a day if you're going to get into this and get into this proper. So, again, full disclosure, I am a DMP ambassador, and DMP supports me. But as I talk about these printers, I'm going to be perfectly transparent and really clear about what this means. If you, let's say, matter of fact, Mitsubishi runs pretty close to DMP in terms of pricing. They make a good machine. If you have to, let's say DMP is not in your budget, definitely go for the second best option. And I don't like second best, but if you have to, I'm going to tell you to do that. And that's just my transparency and my honesty. So, DMP has a lot of features. They keep up on the technology. They're one of the oldest companies. And from what I've heard, that DMP makes a lot of the insides for a lot of other printers. So you may be using the inside of a DMP printer. It's not going to be exactly to the tune of, a 620 or any of their 800 series or whatever. But they just make a great quality printer, and they're very reliable. So I want you to know that going into it. So let me give you some background on print on site. I think from a volume standpoint, it is one of the greatest revenue generators that you could possibly do. But on the flip side, it is one of those types of services that you can offer that will make your business look really bad if you do it wrong. And if you're scared, I'm going to tell you, you should be, because that means you should take every precaution that you can to make sure that everything goes correctly. I've been through a lot of situations, even as an experienced print on site operator. Things still happen. It's just the way of the beast. And just recently, I'm going to share a story with you. Just recently, I was working for I'm actually working as a sub for one of the largest clients that I serve through another photographer. And for the life of me, I decided I was going to bring the backup, because sometimes I don't. I don't bring a backup. The DMP is pretty reliable. And with any printer, you can catch we call them slang, printer slugs. They can be very difficult to get out sometimes. And I know all the little tricks, to making it happen. The thing is, when you're on a live job doing a POS and you're trying to knock a slug out of the roller, time is ticking because the photos never stop. And we call that going into the weeds. So let's say you've shot 30 minutes worth of photos. That could be 20 images times 2. So you've got 40 images on your first run, and you've got to pick the right one. Some photographers take 3, but we usually do 2 to make sure that the person's eyes are open. So that first run, you're getting 40 in. You got to run through those on the computer. Tighten them up, whatever you got to do. And look, folks, let me deviate right now. Do not edit on the fly. Don't go in the Lightroom fixing hairs. What they see is what they get. And you're getting through those, and then you're sending them to the print queue, and off the photos go. That's how it's supposed to work. But if you're trying to fix a slug inside of your printer because maybe you don't have a backup, you're going to be in trouble, because here's what's going to happen. Multiply that 40 times another 40, and now you've got 80 images that you got to run through. And not very many people can edit 80 images pretty quickly. So that becomes a problem. Now, in the second half hour, the traffic volume tends to go up, and I'm going to say it almost doubles. So that 40 then turns to 80. Now you have 120 images, because in that first half hour, people are warming up to it. And then in that next half hour, and this is at a major corporate event, the traffic doubles. So now you got 120. So if you're behind, you're not printing any images. You are behind 120 images, and then you've got to go through a print batch, which means you got to print those 120 and stuff them. you are now down about a half hour just on the first half hour. So as you can see, it turns into a disaster from there. And it happens to the best of us, and as I was mentioning, I was telling my story. I caught a slug, and I literally had, in the first half hour, this is during Christmas too, so the traffic is super heavy in that first half hour, and I had to run out to the car and pull the backup out and or to the truck and plug it in and get it going. And because I've got the experience that I have, I was able to get the slug out of the first printer and while printing on the second printer, and basically meet the print demand. Now, I'm going to tell you that only comes with experience and time, because people are breathing down your neck about the photos. Matter of fact, they may even be standing over your shoulder. Did my photo come out? I took my photo half an hour ago. It could be very frustrating. And this is where POS makes or breaks a photographer. To the point where there's like, I just don't want to do it anymore. And because people are going to come up to you and ask for their photos. People love it. Now here's the catch, you guys. I don't print 4x6s. I don't do it. I don't offer that as a service. Only 5x7 and bigger. 5x7, 6x8. That's all I'm going to print. And the reason for it is when you print 4x6s with a machine like that, you're in competition now with the photo booth. And the only thing that's going to differentiate you from the photo booth is if you have what we call a production backdrop. So there's a company that designed a backdrop. You put your lights in and you're shooting off that backdrop, because now it's extraordinary. And then you offer 4x6. That's a different type of story. I don't do the fluffy boas and all that. We do custom backdrops. Typically, the companies that I work for will order a backdrop, or what we call a step and repeat. And that's what we're photographing off of. So that's my client base, and that's how I rock with it. So I want you to know that there's a huge difference. And 5x7s, when you hand someone a 5x7, it's big, it's in their face. It's bigness. So that's how I operate with, in a nutshell, with my print on site. I typically work for large corporations, and the print on site crews, like I'm doing one, and this will air on Friday. On Saturday night, I'll be doing one of the biggest jobs that I do of the year, and we have a 10-man crew. Sometimes it's me by myself. There's a lot of ways that you can use print on site. It not necessarily, you don't necessarily have to have a backdrop per se. You could offer it as, let's say you do large group photos, for instance. Let's say you do large group photos, and they want you to take a large group photo. One of the services you could offer right away is, hey, I can print that and you can pass it out as a keepsake to your guest, especially if you're working a conference. I love those because it's an instant couple $1,000s, easy. Companies have money to pay for it. They do. And if you can get the folders imprinted, oh man, money all day. So keep that in mind as you think about print on site and what it really means. Also, wedding photographers. I do it for wedding photographers as well. They want key shots and they want them printed at the venue to pass out to their guests. I'll do those. Also I work with local photographers. I'll let them know. There's so much you can do with your printer. It's ridiculous. And now DMP has a machine that allows you to do passport photos, and it'll basically frame it up for you. So if you have a local studio and you just want to make some fast money on your passport photos, you can do that as well. Not everybody wants to go to the post office and get their passport photo. Sometimes they don't feel comfortable around, or they just don't feel comfortable going to the post office taking a photograph. I mean, that alone just sounds trippy. Yeah, I took my photo at the post office, because normally we see photos in the post office. It's not a good thing. So, but you can do that. But if you're looking to just create an extra revenue stream, passport photos might be the ticket if you're in that market. So that's the 411 on print on site, and that's as detailed as I'm going to get in terms of what you can do. There's an article on Rangefinder. If you go to Rangefinder's website and you type in Keith B. Dixon print on site, there's an article there that you can review, and I'll put the link in the show notes so that you guys can access that as well. Now, let me go to this other point, which I think is crucial: lighting. Your lighting has got to be phenomenal. You have to be able to light on location accurately. And I'm going to tell you, it's really simple. If you go to Rangefinder, you'll see the setup that I use. 2 60-inch umbrellas, and it kind of depends on the ceiling height as well. So if I got high ceilings, I'm using 60s. If I got low ceilings, I'm using 40s. 40-inch diameter umbrellas. Nothing more. Matter of fact, I'm going to go out on a limb because we're going to do a little chastising. If I see a photographer using a softbox with a print on site, unless it's a photo booth, I mean, for me, it just signals they don't know what they're doing. Because that softbox is just going to be a disaster, as far as, if you got to push light out, in order for that to work. And it's not going to work effectively with a group of people in a row of people, because the light is going to hit the first person and stop, and then it's going to cast a shadow. So not a good idea. Umbrellas, people, please. I've been doing this for a little while. Take my word for it. Use umbrellas. It's better, especially if people are wearing glasses. You can get them up high. You can eliminate shadows. That's the reason for it. Now here's the second tip. 45-degree angles. 45-degree angles all day. You don't need to do it overhead. You can put it directly overhead if you're maybe doing a small, like, portrait 2-person backdrop. You can use one overhead, but for the most part, 2 45s, 2 lights at 45 degrees, 40-inch umbrellas. And then the other thing that you can do, and this is something you really got to kind of think through. The lights that I use are 750 watt second strobes, and I don't know if you guys remember Calumet. They went out of business. I bought a whole bunch of Calumet lights, and that's what I use for just event photography because they're durable. They've been known to fall. I knew this guy who owned some travel lights, and he would use them outside, and he had a couple fall. They'd still work. I mean, just a rugged light. So I use all 750s with umbrellas, and the reason for that is I just get great light at 700 with the 750 watt second lights. Now, let me contrast what I'm about to say. Some of the photographers I work with, they use 500 watt second lights. I wouldn't go lower than that to do like Santa Claus pictures and other types of things, Easter pictures that we do, whatever. Those work. But I noticed that they have more increased shadows. And when I say 500 watt seconds, these photographers are using Foto 500 watt second lights, 2 of them, and they'll catch shadows. Typically what I do is, as if I'm working as the tech, I'll go in and basically lift the shadows out, create a preset, and then pop it on all the photos. It's a little extra work, but not that bad for the money I'm making for my print on site. So I don't mind doing it, plus it makes the photos look good. That's the main objective, is to get the photos coming off the printer looking good. So if you got heavy shadows, guess what? The printer's going to print heavy shadows. If you got a well-exposed photograph, the printer's going to print a well-exposed photograph. I believe in DMP so much, you guys. I used to have the DS40, I think it was. It was a big printer. And by the way, DMP's printers are generally in every kiosk, in every mall across the United States. That's how good they are. And they make this printer called the DS40. It's heavy. It's a great printer. And let me tell you what I did. One time, I think it was about 2 or 3 years ago, I actually printed up a bunch of my landscape photos and framed them, and then did an art gallery showing, a 5x7 showing of those images. And people walked in, they looked at the images and were like, whoa, and I didn't tell them it was dye sub. I just like, oh, okay, yeah, they were printed. But that's how good the quality is. That's how good I want you to know that the quality of the photo is. So if you're pushing out good images, DMP is definitely one of the best printers. They are the best printer on the market, hands down. All right. As far as software goes, let me tell you, if you're tethering, because I've heard all the stories from somebody write me a custom tethering program to Darkroom on down to Lightroom. The best program on the market right now, multi-purpose, is Darkroom. Hands down. Nothing out there is better than Darkroom on the Windows platform. So you got to buy the Pro version, because what it'll allow you to do is basically imprint the photo. It'll line it up for you. It batches. It creates all the hot folders. I mean, it just does everything. But they only make it for Windows. And when I talk to the owners of the company, because I guess there's licensing issues and things, I don't think it's ever going to get done for Mac. If it did, I'd be all over it. But I don't think it's going to get done for Mac. And I've tried Parallels and Windows, and I've just had, it was always like introducing more problems into my workflow. So I'm a Mac person. I use Mac, and all of my techs use Mac now, and that's how we roll. And Lightroom, that's it. Lightroom does a great job. It's fast. It's matter of fact, CC is even faster. But to be honest with you guys, I'm using Lightroom 5 on one of the because I got about 3 or 4 different systems that I use on site. We use Lightroom 5. Like, literally gets the job done, because all you need to do is see a JPEG file. Matter of fact, we print RAW files. We're transferring RAW files off the camera. I know it sounds ridiculous, but if you're listening to this podcast, that's a tip. We transfer RAW files on cards. No tethered, none of that kind of stuff. We hand cards back and forth on RAW files, and we don't miss a beat. I kid you not. So, why? You might be asking yourself, Keith, why? I'm not a firm believer in the technology just yet. And with that RAW file is everything. Everything is there, with that RAW file. When you get those JPEGs, funny things happen. So I'm a firm believer in passing cards with RAW files. I get the best print. That's how we rock. So if you're thinking, or if someone's told you that, you shouldn't, I'm going to say you shouldn't if you don't have the proper gear. Then you keep it JPEG all day. If your lighting is shaky, and you got JPEG, you might run into some issues, if you need to make corrections. So you definitely got to have your light game on, period, no matter what. But if you don't have the proper equipment, then JPEG. If you're going to tether, you must use JPEG. That's the only way. You're going to kill yourself in your operation if you send that RAW file through tethered, because there's just too many of them. So that's my take on hardware and software. Now, and also image transfer. So image transfer, again, if you're going to tether, just keep it JPEG. And if you're using Lightroom tethered, here's another, I'm throwing in these little nugget tips. If you're using Lightroom, the thing that I would do is I would do it for a smaller event where there's not a lot of people, because the minute you hit the button, it loads the file, and that becomes the priority, loading that file into whatever folder you're dropping it. So if whoever your tech is, if you're tethered up to the camera and you take the picture, it's going to interrupt whatever they're doing and drop the file in. That's a little disastrous. I don't do that. But if I'm working by myself, I'll do it if I need to. And also there's a Cam Ranger option, which I think works a lot better. You create a hot folder and then drop it in with the Cam Ranger. You can research that on DMP's website. They have matter of fact, DMP. Thank you for listening. I appreciate you guys. And if you're a subscriber, thank you very much. If you're going to subscribe, let me thank you in advance. I appreciate you. I love it when I get those alerts that someone subscribed to this broadcast podcast. And I'm looking forward to doing some really good content this year. So every Friday, you guys, every Friday's the date, 7:30 a.m. Pacific Standard Time. Every Friday, I'm dropping a new podcast. Thank you. I'll talk to you soon. Peace.